Thank you so much. Thank you, Rabbi Margolin, for inviting me. Dear Prime Minister, ministers, members of parliament, ambassadors, rabbis, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. From birth, we each possess the seeds of both good and evil. These seeds sprout in a soil composed of reason, empathy, and conscience, but also of fear, selfishness, and indifference. Each of us decides how we want to cultivate our inner garden, what is allowed to thrive, and what is never permitted to take root. The parts we water and nurture grow. The parts we ignore wilt and die. And like animals, we can decide how we will act in any given moment. Everything that happens around us is the result of human actions. The actions of the evil, the ones of the indifferent, and the ones of the good. When the Hungarian author Imre Kertész was awarded the 2002 Nobel Prize in Literature, he was asked how he views evil. His response was that the interesting question is not why one chooses to be evil, but why one chooses to be good. In a presence that echoes the past, the insight that each of us is able to choose good above evil, action above indifference, is a badly needed reminder that nothing is predetermined. In every meeting, every discussion, and every disagreement, we all face a choice: to be good or evil, to speak out, to defend, to question, to denounce. We cannot choose the challenges life gives us, but we can choose how we respond. Students and teachers can choose not to tolerate attempts to turn classrooms into incubators of anti-Semitism. Journalists and authors can choose not to spread anti-Israeli propaganda that dilutes the truth. Decision makers and judges can choose to act against those who demonize Jews and the state of Israel in an attempt to legitimize anti-Semitism. In fact, on a daily basis, each of us is confronted with choices, both large and small, that determine how the future will judge the present. If more people had stood up against the developments of the 1930s, the 1940s would have been very different. If more people stand up against what has happened since the 7th of October, we can still change what tomorrow will become. Remember that in this uncertain moment, as the future of Europe's Jews and of Europe itself as a civilized continent is determined, not choosing other paths is also making a choice. There is a before and an after the 7th of October, just as there was a before and after Kristallnacht, the prelude to the Holocaust 87 years ago. We must rise above the failures of those, good, evil, and indifferent alike, who came before us. We must ensure that the abyss of hate manifested against Jews and the state of Israel in the aftermath of the worst pogroms since the Holocaust is uncompromisingly stifled and stigmatized once again. We must never forget that the spark that ignites the anti-Semitic fire can only be extinguished by those who understand that it did not begin with the Holocaust, but it always ends with that. If the small steps of tyranny are allowed to desensitize the collective sense of morality, between the first and the last steps are all the small steps that pacify, normalize, and ultimately makes us immune, robbing us our initiative and binding us to our own shortcomings. Auschwitz, just an hour from here, has come to be seen as the epicenter of evil, the absolute zero of mankind. Nowhere else has the complex meaning of what it is to be human been so profoundly challenged. Humanity's antithesis, embodied as completely inhumanity, reached its climax in the gas chambers. But the driving force behind the Holocaust was not solely a form of abstract evil. It was preceded and amplified by thousands of years of anti-Semitism. The use of the snuffed out fate of Europe's Jews, the use of the words never again as an expression of a universal wish to eliminate human suffering, war, and racism in general has made anti-Semitism's specific characteristics general and thereby complicated modern understanding of the mobilizing power of anti-Semitism, now as then. This is why it is not enough to remember the Holocaust if you haven't learned anything of what led to it. It is not enough to remember the dead Jews if you're not prepared to make a difference for the living. If Europe's synagogues are not to become monuments to the Jewish life that was once found on this continent, we must stand up for life itself. Jewish life cannot survive in the mental ghetto where many Jews are forced to seek refuge. No life can thrive in the shadows of fear and self-censorship. Regardless of who we are or where we come from, each of us must choose to water the seed of good, to cultivate our humanity every moment of every day. When others remain silent, you must speak out. When others hesitate, you must stand firm. The truth is that if you don't stand up for the Jews of today, you wouldn't have stand up for the Jews of the past either. The future is not determined by fate. It grows from whispers that rise to shouts, from cautious steps that risk trampling reason. These are the choices that ultimately determine the difference between civilization and barbarism, between humanity and inhumanity. Thank you.